Good morning and welcome to Rising, and you better not pout, you better not cry, because Santa Claus is coming to town, Niall. That's what I've heard.
I thought you were going to sing it, Robby, but you just decided to give a poetic rendition.
You know, I was making rather merry last night.
Were you? You're carousing again.
At a holiday party, and it was a lot of fun, and now we are here in the morning living with our choices, living with our excess of eggnog, so to speak.
Why I was fresh as a daisy, Robby, having lived more virtuously last night. But it's good to see you. Our friend Lindsay is a little unwell, but yes. We hope she gets better soon, and I'm glad to be unexpectedly in your company.
Glad to have you with me.
So, coming up on Rising, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino has announced that he's exiting the Bureau in January, and President Trump hinted at why.
Plus, Piers pressed Candace Owens over her theories about Charlie Kirk's assassination and TPUSA employees engaging in a cover-up.
And a new poll shows Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leading Vice President J.D. Vance in a hypothetical 2028 matchup. Ocasio-Cortez even had some words for the VP. But first of all, Robby, why don't you get us going? What is in your radar?
Well, Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent Democrat from Vermont and crusading leftist leader, is proposing a moratorium on new data centers because he says that artificial intelligence is coming along too quickly and that we need time for democracy to catch up. Now, look, I'm all for democracy, and I'm not going to force data centers on communities that really don't want them or can't afford them. But the federal government ordering a halt on all new data centers, I think that's insane. It isn't democratic at all. Actually, it's autocratic. It would cripple innovation in the U.S., and it would leave us vulnerable to our competition, by which I mean China. Now, in fairness, here was Sanders making his case that we shouldn't trust billionaires as the sole decision makers when it comes to AI.
Needless to say, there is a whole lot about AI and robotics that needs to be discussed, needs to be analyzed. But one thing is for sure, this process is moving very, very quickly, and we need to slow it down. We need all of our people involved in determining the future of AI, and not just a handful of multi-billionaires.
Okay, fine. That point is well taken. There's certainly a role for regulators to play as we consider new AI policies. I have no problem with that. But Sanders continues.
That is why, for a start, I will be pushing for a moratorium on the construction of data centers that are powering this unregulated sprint to develop and deploy AI. This moratorium will give democracy a chance to catch up with the transformative changes that we are witnessing and make sure that the benefits of these technologies work for all of us, not just the wealthiest people on Earth.
A moratorium on all new data centers? Holy escalation, Batman. Look, I appreciate this is a revolutionary and poorly understood technology, and that there is a danger in letting tech billionaires do whatever they want. That's why I'm not actually sold, personally, on the Trump administration's AI regulation order, which would transfer the power to set AI regulations to the federal government rather than the states. Now, I actually like the idea of the states experimenting with different regulatory approaches as our founders intended, which might allow the public to see which regulations work best in practice. But Sanders is proposing his own one-size-fits-all policy at the federal level. It's just a policy of maximum regulation. Now, there are plenty of sincere and fair critiques of new data centers. There's also some fear-mongering going on. We should not ask resource-strapped communities to pay more in energy costs in order to support these data centers, if that is the case, although I'm a little dubious it will work like that in practice. And we absolutely cannot, should not, must not use eminent domain to steal land and turn it over for the use of tech billionaires. Okay, fine. A common sense libertarian property rights framework here would be best. The land should be purchased, not seized, and the community should be compensated, perhaps by the tech companies who stand to profit. I'm absolutely not for plunder, and I understand why many Americans are worried that their interests are going to be swept aside in the race to empower big tech. But at the same time, not moving at breakneck speed to develop better AI, that's also a huge risk. That's because there are tremendous upsides with AI. The technology can and will make us richer, it'll make us healthier. I mean, consider self-driving cars, which have already shown themselves to be significantly safer. AI innovations on this front could save thousands of lives every year by stopping car deaths, which is the largest category of preventable death in America, 40,000 people killed every year. I'm fine with moving, I guess, somewhat cautiously, but I don't want to delay research into products that are going to make Americans better off. We also have to consider that even if we dramatically slow down our research into AI, our geopolitical rivals will not. As Trump admin tech advisor David Sachs put it, Bernie makes clear that the debate over AI is not about states' rights or affordability. He would block new data centers even if states want them, and they generate their own power. It's about stopping progress completely so China wins the AI race. Thank you for your honesty, Senator. Now look, I don't believe that Bernie Sanders really wants China to win the AI race, but he needs to take this criticism to heart. Our enemies are not overly concerned about making sure democracy has time to catch up with AI. And a new global order led by a more advanced China would be a grave threat to the US and to US democracy. We need to win this race. There's just no way around it. But I would also quibble with Sanders' suggestion that he's actually pushing the pro-democracy agenda. Again, when he says he wants democracy to catch up, what he's really saying is he wants tech to slow down, even if that's contrary to the people's wishes. What if Americans want to beat China? What if they want better technology and they're willing to make that trade-off, which is necessary to truly empower AI? If they vote against him, will he stand down? It's also weird to me, and not particularly democratic, to say that the federal government should nuke one technology so that its competitors can catch up? Would the early 20th century version of Bernie Sanders have said, this whole Model T technology, it's moving way too fast. We need to put a pause on new factory assembly lines so that horse and buggy can catch up. Because, democracy? Obviously that wouldn't make any sense, nor does a nationwide, federally imposed moratorium on new data centers. I'm all on board with proceeding cautiously again, but halting all progress is not caution, it is itself recklessness.
Interesting one, Robby. I don't entirely disagree. I think that there is obviously a risk in stopping everything completely, and I do take your point that America's rivals, notably China, are really trying to accelerate to maximum speed on this. I am broadly more sympathetic to Bernie Sanders than you are, but also more so in this specific case, because it seems to me the ramifications of AI are so sweeping and so vast that actually cramping the speed of its development or its expansion seems plausible to me. I mean, I was looking at a report, I think it was from McKinsey, talking about, between 3 and 14% of the whole global workforce could have to retrain and find new jobs as AI just sort of scythes through. On the democracy question, we obviously have the issue of deep fakes or other ways where elections could be at least potentially influenced by the misuse of AI to sort of break down that distinction between what's real and what's fake. So I think there are real concerns here, even as there is the issue that we're now in a global race, and how do we balance those competing imperatives?
Right. I mean, in terms of the fake and misinformation and that, I mean, representing, if it gets to the point where we can truly represent someone's words or misrepresent them, that's fraud and that's illegal, and there could be an additional regulatory framework to punish and prevent that. So no problem there. The workforce displacement, yes, there will be tremendous impact on the workforce, but there will also be new jobs created as the result of this technology, freeing up. If all of us just doing the same jobs forever was good, then we'd all be working in the farmlands, right, instead of the factories. So that's not so persuasive to me. And I know there is a lot of fear. This new book, If Anyone Builds It, We All Die, or something, is the name of the. Well, that's too late, because again, China is going to build this. So do you want us to build it, or do you want them to build it? And then the concerns I'm seeing that I really did want to address with this one was the data centers everywhere. And there's this idea that they're increasing energy costs, water costs in the areas where they come to be, although I was seeing some data showing that they're actually lowering energy costs for a complicated reason we probably don't have time to get into. So that could be a good thing then, if having their presence. I'm not going to seize people's lands to give tech billionaires more. Absolutely not. I'm totally against eminent domain. If these things are coming in against the wishes of people who are the property owners and making, that's a trade-off that's just going to directly harm someone. Fine to address that. But again, Bernie was coming from we need to slow this technology down place, and that's where I part ways. We can't have Ludditism here. We can mitigate harms if it's causing harms as we proceed. But we got to proceed.
We can't have Ludditism. I would be curious about that data on the energy point because, I mean, even water use alone is vast. 5 million gallons a day, some of these places, and then all the processing power needed for AI. I mean, it seems on its face like it would increase energy costs to me, but I'd certainly be open to looking at that other data.
Well, next up, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino announced he's stepping down from his role, and we'll be right back with reactions to that.
Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino officially announced he's leaving his position at the Bureau next month, departing after less than 1 year on the job.
In a post on X, Bongino writes, "I will be leaving my position with the FBI in January. I want to thank President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank you, my fellow Americans, for the privilege of serving you. God bless America and all those who defend her."
Bongino's tenure at the FBI was tumultuous at times, most notably with the reported tension between the Bureau and the Justice Department over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Before becoming Deputy Director, Bongino had long questioned the official narrative that Epstein took his own life. Multiple outlets reported that Bongino clashed with Attorney General Pam Bondi over the summer before he eventually seemed to change his mind and agree that Epstein did indeed kill himself.
Prior to his appointment to the FBI, Bongino built a large online following through his podcast, where he was a staunch defender of Trump and a critic of the FBI during the Biden administration. Reactions to his announcement have been pouring in, including from President Trump. Trump told reporters on Wednesday, "Dan did a great job. I think he wants to go back to his show." FBI Director Kash Patel gave his own farewell, writing on X, "Dan's the best partner I could have asked for in helping restore this FBI. He brought critical reforms to make the organization more efficient, led the successful summer heat op, served as the people's voice for transparency, and delivered major breakthroughs in long unsolved cases like the pipe bomb investigation." And that's only a small part of the work. He went about every single day delivering for America. He not only completed his mission, he far exceeded it. We'll miss him, but I'm thankful that he accepted the call to serve. Our country is better and safer for it. No more Dan Bongino.
No,
So
I won't be shedding too many tears about that, as you might imagine.
Back to the podcast circuit. I
Yes.
guess that's where he wants to be.
It's also what he's more temperamentally suited for. I don't even mean that in quite a
well, it's what
sneering a
he's
way as
decided
it
he's
probably
more
came out.
temperamentally
Yeah.
suited for. Maybe Kash Patel should do the same.
Yeah.
That is a criticism that, frankly, people on the right have made of these two at this point. And you'll remember, Niall, I was very excited about Kash Patel. Actually, he was the Trump administration figure I was kind of most excited about because I had heard him on podcasts talking about all these things he wanted to do with the FBI that I thought were great ideas. What I think we've learned subsequently is the case with both of them is that they're very good at talking about things on television, but that's where their heart is. And Kash Patel, we've been making fun of relentlessly this week for that ill-timed podcast appearance. Katie Miller with the girlfriend talking about their relationship as
Right.
the
Brown
Brown
University,
University killer still at large, which is now becoming a really terrifying and appalling failure. You know, as with Charlie Kirk's killer, I'm like, well, give it 2 or 3 days and they'll catch him. Luigi Mangione was the same way. It's been a week now, coming up on a week, and they haven't caught him.
Right.
That's very disturbing, and they have pretty clear footage of relatively of the perpetrator. So I'm still fingers crossed that this person will be brought to justice very swiftly. But this is not an FBI that has satisfied conservatives, I think, by any stretch of the imagination, let alone liberals. We're always going to be rather unhappy with these two characters, but they have not endeared themselves to they started from a position of great friendliness with MAGA. They don't enjoy that now.
Right. And I think that your point about the podcasts and all of that underlines a point that often gets derided, which is that expertise does in fact matter. And both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino made their names really with pretty incendiary rhetoric, and then were, as a consequence of the fame that they had accrued from that process, put on the top of a very important bureau. Now, we could have a whole debate about law enforcement and the FBI and all of that, but the point is the jobs that they occupy are obviously very important jobs. The problem in Bongino's case is that there was this real clash between the kind of claims he had made on his podcast, including, for example, about the January the 6th pipe bomber, which he had continually implied was some sort of inside job, or there was something nefarious about it. They now have arrested someone in that case. It seems like that is not, it's not an inside job at all. There's no evidence of that if it's that person. And so Bongino had to sort of row back from that position. That, I think, is indicative of the broader attitude, and it's why his tenure has been so problematic.
I should note that Thomas Massie has raised some, has echoed some concerns from whistleblowers he's spoken to about the pipe bomber suspect they have. Again, I'm not generally one to question, like, I have no doubt the person they've apprehended in the Charlie Kirk case is the killer. I'm not one to, like, generally question that they've got the right person.
I hope you're not going to become the Candace Owens of the January the 6th pipe bomber.
I certainly don't want to do that, but it is, for whatever it's worth, Thomas Massie said he's heard from people in the FBI who are very surprised about this suspect, who knew this person previously, who lived in the same neighborhood, and have doubts about whether or how he could have possibly pulled it off. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's out there.
I mean, I don't want to say that the guy's guilty when he's presumably going to plead his innocence and is going to have his day in court. But I mean, there was a whole. You remember the Blaze embarrassed itself terribly by naming a person who they said by gait analysis had seemed, 94, 95% certain, and they ultimately had to retract that story. We're not going to identify the person they named here, obviously, but that was indicative of a kind of embarrassing eagerness to declare it an inside job, in my view.
Trump picked a lot of his cabinet positions, a lot of his admin staff from the world of television and entertainment, which he values. That's where he comes from himself. But you're right that it does take not just being good on TV, it takes technical expertise to run a department. It's not all just comms. You can pick the White House press secretary, can come from the realm of television and entertainment, but you need people who don't just go on Fox. And I think even the MAGA faithful is getting a little frustrated with the idea that it's all about the optics and the comms and creating content. I mean, they have total control of the government right now. They have the presidency, they have Congress, they have a Supreme Court that's majority Republican. Now is the time to get things done. And I'm not sure, to deliver on big, bold promises they made about wholesale reform of the FBI, wholesale reform of the deep state and the permanent federal bureaucracy. Are they pulling that off? I don't think the view of the right is that they're pulling that off.
Right.
That Trump is most transformative in ways that are like making businesses and other things personally do his bidding or curry favor with him has been the way he has exercised power most aggressively. That's not hugely beneficial to me. I want to use power in a transformational way to make the federal government smaller, not to make everyone else more afraid of what the president might do to you.
Right, and we will have another example of a kind of trollishness later on. But before that, a new poll shows Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beating J.D. Vance in 2028. We'll talk about that next. Don't go anywhere. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says she would stomp Vice President J.D. Vance in a 2028 presidential matchup.
And a new poll from Argument Verasite suggests that 51% of respondents did back AOC as their presidential candidate for 2028, while 49% backed J.D. Vance. So she was prevailing in a head-to-head matchup. That poll also found that Vance was more popular among white voters, with 57% of them saying they would vote for Vance. AOC had a lead with black and Hispanic voters, 79%, 64% respectively, saying they would choose AOC over Vance. The New York Democrat responded to the above poll on X, writing, bloop.
Meanwhile, the editor of Migrant Insider, Pablo Manriquez, asked Ocasio-Cortez whether she thought she could beat Vance in a head-to-head race for president. AOC first laughed at the question. Oh, disappointingly, we don't have the video, I don't think. But she then said, listen, these polls, like, I can't do an AOC impersonation. Listen, these polls, like 3 years out, are, they are what they are. But let the record show I would stomp him. I would stomp him.
I'm going to have to work on my AOC impression, I guess. Another poll that came out earlier this month found Ocasio-Cortez at the forefront among younger Democrats for a hypothetical 2028 presidential primary. The Yale Youth poll shows the New York Democrat had a lead in the double digits over former Vice President Kamala Harris, California Governor Gavin Newsom, and other possible candidates.
Inject it into my veins, Robby. AOC stomping JD Vance in the 2028 matchup.
Stomp him. It was 51-49, which is, you know, it's a fine.
Yeah.
She could beat him. Yes.
Yeah.
He could beat her. It's a close selection. Like, there's no, oh, she can't win. Of course she could win.
No, I know.
Now, that's the national, you know, if we were nowhere near the election, circumstances will change. Also, the general, you know, the nationwide poll of who's ahead matters not very much. You know, it could be 60-40 in the national poll, but he beats her in Pennsylvania. That's the end. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think,
take with a grain of salt, but interesting nonetheless.
No, for sure. Look, we're not going to get too excited about somebody with a 2% edge 3 years from an election.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the reason I was kidding about us not having the video from Pablo Manriquez is AOC clearly regards it as amusing or entertaining as well. I mean, I'm sure she's happy that it shows her ahead rather than behind. But she takes it all in good humour. People can find that clip on the internet if they feel inclined.
I mean, it would be an interesting, kind of from a mere spectacle standpoint, I think that would be a very fun race to watch because those are both people with a lot of personality and a lot of experience in TV and well-spoken, and they debate well, and they both have strong policy ideas. Actually, they have very substantive policy ideas in addition to the strong personalities. So I think those would be some really interesting debates between, you know, democratic socialism and non-democratic socialism, two ideologies, MAGA socialism and left socialism.
Well,
my ideas won't be well represented on the stage, but oh well.
You can run as the Libertarian candidate, see how many votes you put in.
Maybe
but I do think that an AOC-Vance matchup, though, as well as all the things you mentioned, would create a fair amount of excitement because in addition to the skills that you're talking about, they actually really, they incite strong feelings.
Yes.
You know, and AOC is beloved by many people on the left and loathed by many people on the right. Mirror image of JD Vance in that respect.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Of course, she won't get it easily, but I think she's absolutely going to go for it. I think there's no question at this point. And,
I increasingly think she is because I think the risk-reward of running for president as opposed to primarying Chuck Schumer in a Senate race, I think it's much more likely.
She's running, folks.
We think so. Next on Rising, President Trump delivered a big speech Wednesday night, but it was, in my view, more so a list of angry grievances rather than a holiday miracle. Stick around, I'll tell you more about that now.
All right, Niall, what's in your notes?
Well, today, Robby, I think we go back to President Trump's speech last night to the nation, which wasn't all bad. I mean, at least we're not yet going to war with Venezuela. The president had been rattling his saber more loudly than ever in the direction of Caracas in recent days. Tucker Carlson, among others, had been speculating that last night's speech could include a further escalation, up to and including a declaration of war. In the end, we got no news at all on Venezuela, and on that topic, no news is for sure good news. But that's about the kindest thing you can say about Trump's speech. Frustrated, irritable man yelling at us. That's what we saw last night, and honestly, it's getting rather boring. Maybe that's one reason why Trump's approval ratings are well underwater, by 12 points in an Economist YouGov poll released earlier this week. Perhaps the most surprising thing about last night's address was what a bad performance it was. Trump, who prides himself on his showman skills, rushed his way through the speech. There was little coherence and no charm, only a familiar laundry list of angry grievances. It was, above all, ineffective. As my friend Conal McShane of our sister network News Nation put it dryly on X, quote, "Someone must have thought this Trump primetime address was a good idea. You wonder if that person still thinks that." If you didn't see the speech, the tone and the reckless approach to facts was plain right out of the gate. Let's watch.
Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country.
If some would say that, they're incorrect. Inflation in November 2024, the month Trump won re-election, stood at 2.7% on an annualized basis. New data just out this morning shows inflation last month was at 2.7%. That is, of course, not even remotely close to the highest inflation ever. Later, how about this familiar but nonsensical claim?
I'm doing what no politician of either party has ever done, standing up to the special interest to dramatically reduce the price of prescription drugs. I negotiated directly with the drug companies and foreign nations, which were taking advantage of our country for many decades, to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%.
We all know, but the President apparently does not, that the price of an item cannot be slashed by more than 100%, at which point it becomes free. Here's Democratic Senator Mark Kelly making that point with MS Now's Jen Psaki last night.
So, and then I wish somebody would tell him how math works. Yeah. You know, the prices are going to go down 500 or 600%. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's been through like the 6th grade by then knows that that is not a thing.
Yeah, that is for sure true. He's not a mathematician or a policy guy.
And here's one final example of Trump playing fast and loose with the facts to his own benefit.
For the first time in years, wages are rising much faster than inflation. Remember that. The wages, just look at it. Wages are going up much faster than inflation. How big is that?
I don't know how big it is because I don't know what statistics Trump is looking at to make that claim. Wages have been rising faster than inflation since at least March 2023. That's according to the official wage growth data from the Atlanta Fed. So the pattern Trump claims to be seeing for, quote, the first time in years was already in place for most of the last 2 years of the Biden presidency. Here's the larger point, though. Trump's blame Biden strategy just doesn't work anymore, at least beyond his own hardcore base. You don't have to take my word for that. A Fox News poll released in November showed voters saying by close to a 2-to-1 margin that it is Trump, not Biden, who is primarily responsible for the state of the economy. And a separate question in that same poll found 46% of registered voters feel they have been hurt by Trump's economic policies, more than 3 times as many as the 15% who say they have been helped. That trend is a huge problem for Trump, and ranting about Biden or telling voters that they're wrong to feel the way they do isn't going to help. Above all, Trump's act last night just seemed old. As my homeland's greatest poet W.B. Yeats once wrote, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick. Trump is looking increasingly bruised and tattered and threadbare these days, and last night's speech didn't come close to a holiday miracle. Bit of a Yeats quote to please your English literature major heart, Robby.
I appreciate that. I can't believe we have 3 more years of this.
Right.
Yeah, they need to do something, but it's only going to get harder from here on out because they're going to lose control of Congress, or they're likely to lose control of Congress, I would say. Not the Senate, but the House in the midterms. And then what can you accomplish? Then that's the end of your agenda, effectively. So I don't know what legislative victories can they point to. Now, maybe they don't need to do things legislatively because Congress is controlled by Republicans and they've said, no, president does whatever he wants. What he's doing is we're plotting a war with Venezuela. And what else? What is the agenda? What is going to get prices under control will be the thing the American people reward you for. It's the thing poll after poll shows is most important to them. And they just can't point to enough success on the economic front, even though I would argue having done pretty vanilla Republican things in terms of trade and taxes and regulation would have all strengthened the economy and people would have felt it and would have been good. So we're, again, easy, not transformative, only Trump himself can get this done type of things, but normal garden variety Republican stuff. You know, I listened to to Susie Wiles, like her pushback on Trump in Vanity Fair, and I'm listening, I'm like, man, if you did everything she wanted, the agenda would have been totally on track. In just my perspective, I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, to that point about doing things in a different way, it was during the Biden presidency that we heard the legitimate criticism from the right, primarily, that Biden and his team were making a big political mistake because they kept saying, well, if you look at this data point or that data point, the economy is actually doing better than you think it is. And they were doing the thing that Trump is now, in a sense, replicating, which is saying to people, you might feel that prices are increasing, or you might feel that the economy is not that great, but it really is, because, look, we're just going to tell you it is. That doesn't work politically. In Trump's case, it's often based on just false facts as well, but it doesn't work as a political matter.
We're really seeing the limits and failures of a two-party system that the voters 30% of the voters love Trump, worship Trump, doesn't matter what he does, they're with Trump. Maybe 40% of the voters hate Trump, despise him, they're voting for Democrats. And then there's this gettable chunk in the middle, most of whom went for Trump last time, but they just want the economy to be improved. They'll give Democrats a shot, Democrats blow it, go back to Republicans, and that's it. And there's no other options. And we really suffer from a lack of quality options.
I would be all in favor of a different system where we had a multiplicity of options, but didn't leave you completely dependent on coalition governments, which is a whole other discussion.
Well, Candace Owens, my favorite person, facing heat from major media figures like Piers Morgan, but others such as Megyn Kelly continue to defend her for some reason. Stay with us. Piers Morgan and Candace Owens got into a heated argument on Piers Morgan's show as Owens continues to suggest that employees at Turning Point USA were in some way involved in a cover-up or had foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Earlier this week, Owens met with Erica Kirk after Erica recently told her to stop promoting her theories about Charlie's death. Both women described the meetings as productive. Owens says she gave Erica Kirk the name of 2 employees at TPUSA whom she believes may have known ahead of time that Charlie was going to be killed.
But Piers Morgan slammed Owens for that, saying she doesn't have a shred of evidence.
I told them that if I were in your shoes, these would be 2 employees that I would look further into. That's
and what evidence
I said.
do you have that they had any prior knowledge of the murder?
Because I don't have concrete evidence is the reason why I'm not naming them. So I've been responsible.
You've got no
I'm not
evidence,
saying,
but you're telling the widow that these 2 people may have been involved in the murder. But you see the problem.
Well, the evidence for it is people that there is not concrete evidence. It's like you're trying to get me to say something that I never said and then asking me to defend it.
No, I'm
not
asking what evidence
let's
you've
actually
got.
go to, you're asking me privately, did I communicate to them that I think you should look further? That's called an investigation, Piers, okay?
Owens was blasted for her comments by many conservatives online. Republican strategist Matt Whitlock called her a deeply sick person making millions of dollars while infecting millions of people. Conservative influencer Colin Rugg says it was never about concrete evidence. It was always about vibes and my skin is crawling and you just know.
Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly is firing back at those who have criticised her for not publicly speaking out against Candace Owens. Kelly hasn't endorsed Owens' claims, but she hasn't really outright condemned them either, and that has led to outrage from some of her listeners. Kelly said on her Tuesday show that she has been behind the scenes trying to help mend the relationship between Owens and Erica Kirk. She also says that people whom she used to consider her friends are trying to publicly shame her because of her refusal to separate herself from Owens. Here were some of Kelly's fiery comments.
I don't have any pearls of wisdom other than go yourselves. Go yourselves. You have no clue what's going on. You don't know what I do behind the scenes. And your world is so myopically online. You fail to understand there are real humans involved here. And actually being able to touch grass and have relationships with them, which is something I'm doing, could prove to actually benefit all involved. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't at all, but it's at least got a shot. I'm not sure your Twitter shame game has gotten anything of value done.
Let me say something briefly in Megyn Kelly's defence, which I never do. We were listening to the
looks great there.
Radio.
Is that what you were going to say?
Well, we could say that for sure. What I was going to say was I feel like we listened to the radio-friendly edit with all the swearing bleeped out. I've heard the unexpurgated version of that, and that's some impressive swearing. I always appreciate some quality profanity. We can't.
You would as an Irishman.
Yes, exactly. And of course, with Megyn Kelly, I assume is of my heritage in that way too.
Yes.
So good for her, even though I disagree with her in all sorts of other ways. Anyway, what's your serious view on your favourite topic, Ms. Owens?
I don't lay awake at night in some rage or fury that she has failed to denounce Candace Owens. Right, I agree. Megyn Kelly doesn't have an expectation to do it. Megyn Kelly has not fostered and is not responsible for Candace Owens in some way. I think everyone should denounce her, or not even denounce her, just like point out that the things she's saying are wrong, or can be dismissed without evidence because she has presented none. Sensational claims that are made without evidence can just be dismissed. If you say aliens have visited us and they're among us now, and I say, what's your proof? And you say, well, I don't have any proof. I'm like, okay, then we're moving on from this conversation. I don't have to prove a negative. You have to prove the crazy thing you say. And sometimes you can. Sometimes crazy things are correct or have a kernel of truth to them, which is why I don't, write off what we call conspiracy theories. We should listen to them. We should see people, sources of knowledge and expertise and authority are wrong. Establishments are wrong. That's all fine. Candace Owens does not have any proof for the things she's saying. And the things she's saying are consequential for the people she's smearing. And she cannot say to Piers Morgan, who, by the way, I think is fantastic. I've become such a Piers Morgan fan in the last few years. I think he's a great interviewer, doing a lot of good, fostering important dialogue and conversations. I'm all for him. Good on you, man. She didn't quietly tell Erica Kirk, look out for these two. I don't know, there's something wrong. And then not say anything about it publicly. She's saying it publicly. She's just not saying who she's saying it about. So she's still trying to cash in on the things she's saying. So she's not like quietly behind the scenes trying to make some good faith effort to get to some bottom of some mystery. A mystery we've already solved, by the way. And I can't stand her. I really can't. It's wrong, and Erica Kirk. I'm not going to tell Erica Kirk what she should or should not do, or who she should not meet with. That's up to her. I think she's handling this insane person with all the dignity and grace that she can possibly muster. And Candace was a friend to Charlie way back when. They were close. They were on great terms for a long time, and she might feel some, because of that, Charlie's friendship with Candace, that there's some residual, that the right course of action is to engage with her positively and try to ask her not to do this and not have some big blow up with her for whatever reason. That's fine. I'm not questioning any aspect of what Erica's doing. But Candace's arguments are easily taken apart because she has no evidence, none.
Well, to that point, I mean, even in the clip we just played of the Piers Morgan interview, that certainly bears out your praise of him. But all he was doing in that instance was saying, so what evidence do you have? And she was saying, well, I don't really have any. I don't have hard evidence, was her.
And if you say, because then they were quibbling over, she's saying, I didn't say that Charlie's friends had killed him, but if you're saying they knew that he was going to be murdered, you are effectively saying that they were in on a plan. If they had foreknowledge and did not warn him, then they were part of a plan. Perpetrated by who? So they were, okay, so members of Turning Point USA, you're saying were what? They were in contact with Tyler Robinson? Because now she is not denying that he was the killer, as far as I can tell, because the evidence is overwhelming that he was. She's just saying he was one of, there are other people. Okay, there's Turning Point USA who are involved, so that they were aware of this. They were in contact with this person, this random person whose grievance against Charlie appears to be didn't like his views on transgender issues and was in a relationship with a transgender person. So there were what? They're in these forums with the transgender community where these things had been discussed? Because just the fact that there's someone online prior to the attack who said Charlie Kirk's going to get it on whatever day, that's not evidence of anything because there's millions of people saying things about Charlie Kirk at all times, so that you can point to one forum where someone says, "Oh my God, did they know?" Well, there's thousands of messages like that because people were, unfortunately, always wishing. A lot of people were wishing violence on him, so that proves nothing. So it's just you're alleging something that, if you think about it, is sensational, is huge. That, oh my God, people at Turning Point knew their boss was about to get murdered. Why do you think that? And then crickets.
Yeah, look, I think that all of that, to the best of my knowledge, what you just said is accurate. The bigger, I guess, sort of cultural question about Candace Owens' prominence is why there are so many people who are willing to embrace theories for which she provides next to no evidence and really enthusiastically embrace those theories and push back against anyone who says, well, if you look at this, this, and this, it's plainly not true. We do seem to have got into a situation where the dislike of establishment or orthodox explanations or expertise is so pronounced that people like Candace can have extremely...
Life is not always a television plot. It's not always... I loved the show 24. Do you remember that show?
Yes, yes.
That with the premise of it is that it's real time. Every episode's an hour. I loved the whole show. And yeah, in the later seasons, it's always, the terrorist group the president is in on it. And it's, oh my God, it's that person. And because it's a TV drama. Life is not always like that. Sometimes just a crazy person does something bad and it's not connected to some broader conspiracy. Sometimes it could be connected to some broader conspiracy, but just because you want it to be like that doesn't mean it is. But of course, Candace has a tremendous financial incentive to pretend that it is, because she has millions of, unfortunately, very gullible people who she's taking for a ride on this.
Hanging on her every word.
Hanging on her every word. Next up, the White House is making another addition, this time to the Presidential Walk of Fame. How Trump seems to be trolling his predecessors yet again. That's coming up.
The Presidential Walk of Fame, one of the many additions to the White House made by President Trump, has some new additions.
You may remember it made headlines when Trump replaced the photo of Biden with a photo of the auto pen. Well, now the White House has added text under each presidential portrait, and with them, the trolling continues. The new plaques rip both of Trump's predecessors, Biden and Obama, and even some Republicans like George W. Bush.
Much of it reads like one of the president's Truth Social posts. Here, for example, is a snippet from Biden's plaque. It begins, "Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history, taking office as a result of the most corrupt election ever seen in the United States. Biden oversaw a series of unprecedented disasters that brought our nation to the brink of destruction." It continues, "Nicknamed both sleepy and crooked, Joe Biden was dominated by his radical left handlers. They and their allies in the fake news media attempted to cover up his severe mental decline and his unprecedented use of the auto pen. Following his humiliating debate loss to President Trump in the big June 2024 debate, blah, 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 you get the idea."
For Obama, his nameplate calls him one of the most divisive political figures in American history and blasts the former president for spying on the 2016 presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and presided over the creation of the Russia hoax, the worst political scandal in American history. Obama's nameplate also takes a jab at Hillary Clinton, noting that Obama's handpicked successor lost the presidency to Trump.
In fact, Trump seems to be the through line in each of the plaques. Ronald Reagan's mentions that the former president was, quote, a fan of the young Donald Trump, and Bill Clinton's nameplate also notes Trump's victory over Hillary Clinton in 2016 and even mentions NAFTA, adding that Trump later terminated that deal.
As for Trump himself, he of course has two plaques, with his latest concluding in all caps, quote, "The best is yet to come."
I feel like we're for once united in criticism of Trump here.
Oh my God, this is so dumb. I can't,
It's ridiculous,
blah.
right?
Like, where to even begin? Okay, so Democrats are going to take back the White House someday, and then they're going to replace the plaques with things mocking Republicans. Like, if Joe Biden or Barack Obama had put plaques under George Bush and Reagan making fun of them,
yeah, I
mean, it would just be like wall-to-wall right-wing media coverage of that, because it would be embarrassing and shameful. And frankly, I don't think as low, I hold Joe Biden and his team in very, very low regard. I don't think I hold them in low enough regard to think they would ever do that.
Right.
So this is juvenile. There's a country to run. There's an economy to fix. There's a foreign policy to get on track. It's like it's third graders are running the office. This is not that funny. Or maybe we would just overlook it if everything was great. But it's not. Everything is not great, and all of their efforts seem to go into finding new ways to make libs mad. Okay, libs are mad. Congratulations, but I'm mad too, and a lot of your base is mad. So this is for the smaller and smaller and smaller contingent of MAGA. They're just like, oh, base, so funny. Oh, great.
Yeah.
The clapping seals out there are not going to get Republicans reelected in 2026.
Right. I mean, this is just trolling and gimmickry, really. And that is obviously a problem when you're in the most powerful elected office in the world.
I'm surprised they didn't draw a male reproductive organ
Right.
over Joe Biden's face.
Yeah.
Like they did on your textbook if you left it out in the 6th grade.
Right.
That is the level we're operating at now. Come on, guys.
It is
serious.
the level. And it's just simultaneously sort of disgusting on one level and just ridiculous on the other. I do wonder to some extent if it has some sort of connective tissue with Trump's response to the Rob Reiner killing. Now, the Rob Reiner response, I think, was more disgraceful because it was attacking a person who had literally been murdered in the most brutal fashion. But it did point to that element of Trump that he just simply blasts anybody who he sees as having crossed him, even in a completely distasteful or indecent way, and I would argue often, ultimately, to his own detriment.
And to be clear, I have no problem of mockery of Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Donald Trump or any other political figure. Leave that to media and pundits and political operators. This is in the White House itself. There's got to be a little bit of dignity with the office, a little bit of respect for public resources. These are portraits of the people who've served as president, and you're trying to just rewrite history, and you shouldn't do that.
Crazy stuff.
Waste of time, very bad. That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen on the go, we're available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you later.